This page is the cover, prominently featuring a review of Spider-Man and his ability to navigate levels using web slinging. Inside, they also delve into Ready 2 Rumble Boxing, Round 2 and the intense rail shooter Sin and Punishment, a real gem from Treasure that was a sought-after import back in the day. They cover Mega Man 64, which is the N64 version of Mega Man Legends, along with Cruisin' Exotica and Indiana Jones, and the Infernal Machine. The cover also promises over 1,000 cheats, and even includes a look ahead at the forthcoming GameCube console. This page opens with the editorial section, where the team reflects on the new year and their excitement for the latest issue. They talk about covering the Spider-Man game and mention upcoming content like previews for Mega Man 64, Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, and Mario Party 3. They also highlight reviews for the previously mentioned Spider-Man, Ready 2 Rumble Boxing, Round 2, the sought-after import title Sin and Punishment, and Cruisin' Exotica. The editor, Roy Kimber, notes the N64's solid performance over the Christmas period. A humorous section follows, explaining how various team members gained bizarre superhero-like abilities after strange radioactive encounters. Roy became Gunman, Nikki Glittergirl, Paul turned into Constantly on the Phone Man, and Alex was transformed into Trivia Man. The page features images of the team in their newfound superhero personas, alongside large images of Nintendo icons, Mario and Banjo and Kazooie. This page is the magazine's contents, prominently featuring the Spider-Man and Ready 2 Rumble games with previews. It also lists reviews for Sin and Punishment and Cruisin' Exotica, alongside a feature looking at the future of Nintendo with the GameCube. This page is the news showcase, detailing Nintendo's future plans. GBA production is gearing up for its Japanese launch with plenty of games. The GameCube is getting solid third-party backing, with EA on board looking at FIFA, Madden, SSX snowboarding, and Namco returning, testing the hardware with a possible Ridge Racer V port, shown here with screenshots. The big rumor here, mind, is that Rare's Perfect Dark 2 was planned for the GameCube launch, shown off with impressive Joanna Dark tech demos at Space World, which got everyone talking at the time. Nintendo news includes lower licensing fees for third-party publishers, potentially increasing game availability. Relief surrounds the UK release of LucasArts titles like Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine and Star Wars, Battle for Naboo, saved by THQ. Japanese box art for games like Ganbara Goemon showcases unique artistic styles. The GameCube is gaining support from developers like EA and Namco. Conker's Bad Fur Day is highlighted for its mature content and controversial advertising. The Most Wanted section previews anticipated titles. Perfect Dark 2 is teased, along with Resident Evil 0 and Eternal Darkness. Excitement builds for the UK release of Star Wars Episode 1, The Battle for Naboo. This page features the letters section, where readers share their thoughts. One letter discusses issues with WWF No Mercy, with the magazine confirming reports of save glitches and crashes and providing a contact for THQ. Images of wrestlers are shown alongside this letter. Another reader expresses disappointment with The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, finding Ocarina of Time tedious and disliking Majora's Mask's time limit. The magazine robustly defends the games and the adventure genre, with Zelda screenshots visible. A third letter champions the N64 and its diverse library, countering claims of childishness by referencing games like Banjo-Kazooie, artwork shown, alongside more mature titles such as GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, arguing for the quality of Nintendo's output. The page also showcases the Star Prize bundle of N64 accessories. This page features the letters section, where readers are airing their thoughts on various gaming topics. One chap is concerned about the delays to games like Conker's Bad Fur Day and the promised Dinosaur Planet, questioning the point of new N64 releases with the GameCube on the horizon. There's another letter from someone who isn't a fan of the WWF wrestling games, finding them repetitive, and the magazine team opens the floor for debate on that one. Someone else is craving originality, pointing out the common rescue the princess trope seen in platformers, with a picture of Princess Peach included, asking if there are unique games out there. The magazine counters by mentioning Lode Runner 64 and Pokémon Snap as examples that break the mold. A reader offers a feminine perspective, wishing for more games appealing to girls beyond stereotypical themes, leading to a discussion about games like Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, and Banjo-Kazooie proving otherwise. Finally, there's a worrywart wondering if the magazine will continue covering Nintendo products with the new consoles coming, and the response reassures them it will. Also on the page are adverts. One from Telegames is pushing Game Boy Color titles like Seamus, Towers, Yars and Rhino, plus a PlayStation game, Iron Soldier 3. Another is for GameStation offering to buy, sell and exchange games, showing off new releases like Pokemon Gold and Silver for the Game Boy Color, and a list of top used games, which includes plenty of N64 favorites. This page kicks off the 64 site section, giving us a look at upcoming games. Front and center is a preview for Mega Man 64. The article reflects on Mega Man's long history, mainly in 2D, before diving into his move to 3D with this N64 title. It's based on the PlayStation version, but supposedly improved for the N64's unique controller and features like the Rumble Pack. Visually, it's got a distinct, almost cartoon-like style which looks quite sharp in the screenshots. The preview mentions fixes for some technical glitches found in the original, which is always a plus when bringing a game over, though it hints this might have meant some redesigns or making things a bit smaller. There are comparison shots showing how Mega Man looked way back on the NES Game Boy and SNES, highlighting his evolution to the 3D model seen here. We also get glimpses of other characters like Roll and some of the quirky enemy designs. It was indeed released in 2001, bringing the Mega Man Legends world to the N64. The section also lists upcoming previews for Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine and Mario Party 3. The next page carries on with the Mega Man 64 preview. We get a better look at the 3D environments and combat through more screenshots, showing Mega Man mixing it up with some of the larger mechanical enemies. The article delves a bit deeper into the story, with Mega Man searching for the hidden legacy in a futuristic world facing energy issues. Sounds intriguing enough for a Mega Man adventure. It talks up the potential for classic Mega Man action with powerful weapons and upgrades, which is the core of what we want from the series. The game was apparently shown off at E3 and Space World, and it looked promising even then. It was definitely released for the N64 eventually, so fans could dive into the Mega Man Legends world. The right side of the page is all about a competition with various prizes, but that's not really N64 content, is it? This page is all about Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine coming to the N64. It mentions how the adventure genre was popularized by Tomb Raider. But this is the real deal with Indy. The story involves Soviets trying to find an ancient machine tied to a parallel dimension. The article highlights that the N64 version was improved over the PC original, particularly the controls, which are described as much tighter and easier to use, especially the whip, which works like the Z targeting in Zelda games. It also mentions graphical improvements, making the environments crisper and more detailed. There was some worry about a European release, but THQ stepped in to publish it over here, which was great news as LucasArts weren't always keen on European 64 releases. The screenshots show Indy in various locales, from snowy mountains and deserts to ancient ruins and underwater sections, showing off the diverse adventure. It was indeed released in the UK, so we got to play this cracking adventure. This page is all about Mario Party 3. It asks why Nintendo keeps pumping these out, but answers itself saying it's because they're successful, and, let's be honest, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This third installment keeps the familiar formula of moving around a board, playing mini-games, and collecting stars. The big draw this time is the sheer volume of new stuff. 70 new mini-games and 10 different game boards, plus new characters joining the party, including Waluigi. The article points out the game is simple, enjoyable fun, full of bright colors, and ideal for multiplayer sessions, which is really the heart of the series. There are shots showing different mini-games and board layouts, and you can see familiar faces like Mario, Luigi, Peach, and a bunch of classic enemies and allies. There's even a mention of a new helper character in one mode. It's deemed the best of the bunch at the time, offering plenty of button bashing and stick wiggling action. It came out in the UK in 2001, published by Nintendo with Hudson Soft handling the development. Definitely a classic couch multiplayer title on the N64. This page kicks off a big feature about what makes different types of video games tick. Cheekily titled, "What's it all about?" It sets the scene by talking about game genres in general, noting that most people prefer certain types and that magazine reviewers often bang on about them. The article explains that for the N64, they reckon there are 8 main distinct genres they'll be looking at. The focus then shifts to the adventure genre, describing it as offering players an escape into other worlds. It talks about how adventure games evolved from text-based affairs like the classic The Hobbit into more visual experiences. Naturally, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time is flagged up as the top N64 adventure game, and rightly so, a true masterpiece covering time travel and epic quests. Other N64 adventure games mentioned are Mystical Ninja starring Goemon and Shadowgate 64. The page is packed with images, showing the N64 console itself, screenshots from Zelda and others, plus a bloke dressed up, who seems to be the Alfie bloke the feature is named after. This page continues the genre breakdown feature, first tackling the beat-em-up genre. It covers the different styles like static, progressive, and wrestling games, mentioning classics such as Way of the Exploding Fist, Fighting Force, Mortal Kombat, and Street Fighter. For the N64, the top beat-em-up is named as Tom and Jerry, Fists of Fury, described as a cartoon brawl, perhaps not as fast as others but addictive. The all-time classic beat-em-up is International Karate Plus, praised for its realistic one-strike wins, and noting you can get a version on Game Boy Color. The second genre covered is Party/Puzzle, highlighted for its mind-testing games and social focus, often packed with minigames. The most famous puzzle game is acknowledged as Tetris. On the N64, the top game in this category is Bust-A-Move 2, a great bubble-bursting game. The all-time classic pick is Tetris itself, the runaway winner, with mention of its Game Boy Color iteration. Other N64 party games, like Mario Party and Pokémon Puzzle League, are also brought up. The page is filled with screenshots from these games, showing fighters, puzzle layouts, and party minigames. This page continues the game genre breakdown feature, moving on to platform and racing games. The platform section looks back at early classics like Manic Miner and Jet Set Willy, noting how the genre evolved into complex adventure games like Tomb Raider, highlighting the enduring popularity of characters like Mario, and naming Banjo-Tooie as the top N64 platformer and Jet Set Willy as the all-time classic. The racing genre summary charts its history from arcade cabinets like Outrun to more realistic console titles, acknowledging the challenge of getting speed on the N64, and selecting F1 World Grand Prix as the best N64 racer and Outrun as the all-time classic, mentioning other titles like F-Zero-X, Wipeout 64, and Excitebike 64 along the way. This page continues the feature on game genres, looking at shoot-em-ups and sports. The shoot-em-up section covers the genre's evolution from classic 2D scrolling games like Defender and R-Type, to the first-person 3D titles that became huge. It acknowledges the controversy around violence but focuses on the gameplay. The N64 had strong entries including GoldenEye, Quake 2, Perfect Dark, Turok 3, and Rainbow Six, though the PC is noted for its multiplayer strength. Screenshots show classic 2D action and various 3D examples from games like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, along with imagery of characters and weapons. Perfect Dark is named the top N64 shoot-em-up, praised for building on GoldenEye, while GoldenEye itself is selected as the all-time classic, still popular even after Perfect Dark's arrival. The sports section highlights the genre's vast scope, dominated heavily by football, soccer, globally, though American football, hockey, and basketball are big in the US. Sports games are recognized as reliable sellers due to fan loyalty. The king of sports on N64 was a battle between Konami's ISS and eSports FIFA series. The page features screenshots from football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and golf games, plus various sporty characters. Is98 takes the spot for the top N64 sports game, called the best ISS on the console. The all-time classic sports game is Kickoff, remembered fondly across formats for being fun and friendly despite not having real players. This page continues the genre feature, turning its attention to strategy and simulation games. It explains that these are really two distinct genres, though the N64 didn't have many proper simulation titles. Simulation games are described as trying to recreate real-life activities, which often makes them complex to control, and it notes the PC is the classic home for these, although the PS2 and GameCube were expected to change that. Strategy games, on the other hand, put you in charge of armies or units in battles. Early ones were simple maps, but they evolved with more detail and animation, adding an arcade feel to the strategic elements. The top N64 strategy/simulation game is named as StarCraft 64. It's praised as a command and conquer in space, with loads of options, great graphics, and units that talk. It's mentioned that it wasn't out in the UK at the time this was written, which is a shame as it's an excellent real-time strategy game. The all-time classic strategy/simulation game goes to Laser Squad. This was a follow-up to Rebel Star Raiders, starting life on the Spectrum 48K. The aim is to lead Space Marines against alien hordes. It's highlighted as being turn-based strategy, rather than arcade action, and it's seen as a key forerunner to modern graphical strategy games. There's also a large section advertising a PlayStation 2 magazine called P2, launching in January 2001, which is interesting to see included here but not relevant to the N64 feature itself. This page launches into a big feature looking at Nintendo's journey over the past 4 years, charting the N64's story since its launch in 1996. It talks about the console's highs and lows, showing screenshots of absolute classics like Mario 64, Pilotwings 64, and Wave Race 64. The feature discusses the tough competition faced from Sony's PlayStation and looks ahead to the upcoming challenge from the PlayStation 2 and Microsoft's Xbox. It touches on the N64's challenges, like launch delays, and the cartridge format compared to CDs. The article asserts that Nintendo isn't finished and has learned lessons, hinting at their future plans with the GameCube and Game Boy Advance. There are plenty of pictures of the N64 hardware, cartridges, and even a brief look at the N64DD peripheral, alongside images of the competing PS2 and Xbox consoles. The name of the game explores Nintendo's strategy for the GameCube era, focusing on securing third-party support, a challenge the N64 faced. The article highlights key publishers and developers joining the GameCube, including Infogrames, Unreal, Driver Sequels, Capcom, Resident Evil 0, and hints about Squaresoft's Final Fantasy. Nintendo's strong second-party support is also emphasized, with Rare, Perfect Dark 2, Saberwolf, Factor 5, Metroid, and Silicon Knights, Eternal Darkness, contributing to the platform's future. Activision confirms support, with titles like Tony Hawk's and Quake. The article underscores the hope for significant developer backing, and showcases potential GameCube graphics and related images, representing a crucial shift for Nintendo's success, including Quake. GameCube's future looks bright with strong developer support. Electronic Arts confirms titles like SSX, FIFA, and Madden. Konami plans to bring International Superstar Soccer and hints at Metal Gear Solid and Castlevania. Namco is rumored to bring major franchises, including Soul Calibur 2 and Ridge Racer vs. Ubisoft will offer Rayman 3, Tetris, and potentially an F1 racing game. Midway, 3Do, and others are expected to port their popular titles. Nintendo's internal teams, including EAD, are working on iconic franchises like Mario, Zelda, Star Fox, and F-Zero. With numerous developers on board and promising titles, the GameCube's launch is set to be significantly stronger than the N64's. This page kicks off the magazine's review section with a cracking look at what's coming up. Featured prominently is Spider-Man, with a great illustration and the promise that the game delivers on the web-slinger's abilities. There are screenshots showing classic foes like Venom and Dr. Octopus, hinting at the villains you'll face. The page also previews other titles, including Ready 2 Rumble Round 2, bringing more arcade boxing action, Sin and Punishment, highlighted as a unique shoot-'em-up experience for the N64 platform, which was quite the import gem back then, and Cruisin' Exotica, another entry in the lively racing series. Additionally, this section includes handy guides explaining the magazine's review format. It details what's covered in the Ninfo box, the $64,000 question highlighting pros and cons, notes on PAL performance for imported titles, and where to find import suppliers. There's a breakdown of the 5-tier N64 logo rating system and the percentage scoring scale, explaining what each level signifies from absolute must-buys to ones you should really avoid. The different categories like graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge are defined, and there's even a guide to the Nintendo 64 controller buttons. It's everything you need to understand how the games are being judged. This review praises the N64 Spider-Man game, highlighting its comic book presentation with stylish level introductions and cutscenes. The gameplay is a blend of platforming, beat-em-up action, and adventure, capturing the character's essence. Key features include great character animation and the freedom to move on any surface, facilitated by a robust web-slinging mechanic. The game offers versatile controls, varied combat, and numerous boss battles. The review also notes helpful in-game explanations and the use of characters like Black Cat. Though the camera and collision detection have minor issues, the game is presented as a solid title that successfully brings Spider-Man to life on the N64. This page continues the review of the N64 Spider-Man game, delving deeper into the gameplay mechanics and character roster. It highlights the sheer range of gameplay styles, covering everything from high-flying web-swinging, which the game does well despite potential falls if you mess up, to various combat moves like knuckle dusters and web balls. It also touches on stealth sections, particularly within the bank level, where wall crawling and ceiling movements are key to avoiding enemies. The review notes that adjusting to the camera and controls during transitions, like going from wall to ceiling, takes a little getting used to but is manageable. The page also features a Dramatis Personae section, showcasing the impressive lineup of characters from the Spider-Man universe that appear in the game. This includes heroes like Black Cat and Daredevil, villains such as Doc Ock, Scorpion, Rhino, Venom and Lizardman, as well as supporting characters like Peter Parker and J. Jonah Jameson. Additionally, a real page-turner section explains how the game tells its story using comic book-style cutscenes, which is a neat touch taken directly from the source material. The screenshots throughout the page demonstrate the various gameplay elements and these distinctive cutscene panels. This page continues the review of the Spider-Man game for N64. It touches on some minor camera fumbles that can happen when changing angles, which can briefly disorient you, but it's not a major issue. It highlights the web-zipping ability with a targeting system, explaining how the colored icon shows if your target is in range. The review praises the game's humor and overall presentation, noting the extensive voice acting and the way the game feels like you're playing through a cartoon or comic strip, enhanced by narration that sounds like Stan Lee himself. There's a specific section detailing the encounter with Scorpion, one of Spider-Man's classic villains. This level involves protecting J. Jonah Jameson while dealing with Scorpion, requiring you to use everything at your disposal, including furniture, while keeping your distance, as hitting Scorpion won't defeat him, and failing to protect JJ results in a game over. The screenshots show various gameplay moments, including web swinging, combat in interior locations like the bank, the Scorpion encounter, and rooftop chases. The distinctive comic book panel style is also visible in the Scorpion section. This review of Spider-Man highlights its diverse gameplay modes, though some like time attack and survival are seen more as practice. Hidden items such as comics, costumes and cheats greatly enhance replayability. The game's varied stages maintain a strong comic book feel. Minor issues include occasional camera problems and collision detection glitches, especially during boss fights. The review mentions a particularly thrilling level involving a helicopter chase, showcasing the game's climbing mechanics. Despite these minor drawbacks, Spider-Man receives high praise, with the review calling it tremendously fun. While not officially released in the UK, import versions were readily available. The game's controls are noted, and it earned a strong overall score of 91%. A second opinion emphasizes the unique web-slinging and freedom of movement, making it a standout N64 title. Screenshots show exciting action, featuring web-swinging and battles with iconic villains. This page features a review of Ready 2 Rumble Boxing, Round 2 for the N64. Following up on the first game, this sequel keeps the focus firmly on arcade style, over-the-top boxing action rather than simulation. The review points out that while the core idea is entertaining, the N64 version struggles with control responsiveness, making the action feel a bit delayed compared to hammering the buttons. It mentions the game includes modes like the team battle, allowing players to form a stable of boxers for an endurance fight against others. The game was an import title for those looking to get their hands on it. The review highlights various fighters and screenshots, showing the exaggerated character designs and engineering action, including familiar faces and some new ones. This review of Ready 2 Rumble Boxing, Round 2 on the N64 critiques the game's controls, citing lag between button presses and actions, making complex moves difficult. The game's reliance on specific button combinations for basic actions felt unnecessary. The review highlights the over-the-top, stereotypical character designs, with examples like the Italian fighter. A section details the aerobics training mode. Pick on someone your own size, profiles 3 fighters, providing brief personality descriptions and special move inputs. Screenshots showcase in-game action, training sequences, character selection, and locker room views. The conclusion states that while the core game is fun, the N64 version suffers due to performance issues, suggesting the port is inferior to other console versions. The review questions whether this is due to the N64's limitations or poor porting. The next page continues the look at Ready 2 Rumble Boxing, Round 2. It dives further into the game's modes, highlighting the tournament mode which supports up to 8 players and how the computer handles the rest of the fighters. It also touches on the various training sections, including the rather memorable Rumble aerobics led by Bubbly Julie and a skipping rope minigame called Jade Skippy. These training games are presented as ways to build fighter stats and earn money for pills and vitamins. The review mentions the game's large roster, noting 13 new boxers, with some being unlockable, including a mention of a Michael Jackson-inspired character. However, it notes that unlocking them requires playing through the championship mode. Carrying screenshots showcase the training modes, character select screens, and in-game action. The bottom line section lists the controls. The alternatives section points to the first Ready to Rumble and Knockout Kings 2000. The main rating is broken down into graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge, showing a mixed score across the board. The overall score for the N64 version is given as 59%. A soundbite describes the audio as a letdown. A second opinion reiterates that the N64 version is disappointing, feeling inferior to the Dreamcast or PS2 versions, particularly noting the unresponsive controls. The review ultimately concludes that while the core game might have potential, the N64 port suffers from fundamental issues like control response, making proper timing a nightmare. Sin and Punishment, a frantic import shooter for the N64 developed by Treasure, is a visually stunning game with graphics rivaling the GameCube. Players control Saki in a non-stop gunfight against hordes of enemies and massive bosses in a 3D world, viewed from a third-person perspective. Despite the constant action, the game maintains a high frame rate and impressive visual effects. Published by Nintendo as a Japanese import, the game cost a substantial £79.99. It features controller pack support for saving, and surprisingly boasts 4-player support, though it's primarily a single-player experience. The review praises the awesome graphics and sound, the action-packed gameplay, and the effective intro and plot. The unique control scheme and helpful training mode are also positives. The game's difficulty increases towards the end, offering a challenging experience. Sin and Punishment is considered a classic, beloved by those who could afford the import, and the unique cooks. This page continues the deep dive into Treasure's incredible import, Sin and Punishment. The headline proudly declares it, arguably, the best arcade-style shoot-'em-up on the N64, a bold claim, but one many would agree with. It highlights the game's explosive action and stunning graphics, noting the attention to detail even on smaller elements, and the dynamic animation that makes the world feel alive, like the ground shaking from blasts. The review touches on the intense sound design that complements the frantic gameplay, with the noise of weapons and explosions often dominating the music, which just adds to the chows. It praises the visually striking intro sequence, showing scenes with the protagonist Saki, and setting up the sci-fi story involving government soldiers, rebels, and robots. Comparisons are drawn to classic rail shooters like Panzer Dragoon and Space Harrier, acknowledging a similar graphical style to Panzer, but emphasizing Sin and Punishment's distinct gameplay focus. The review specifically mentions the unique control scheme utilizing the N64's D-PAD, setting it apart from other shooters. It really was a fantastic import that pushed the N64 to its limits and remains a standout title, even if it was hard to get your hands on back then. Sin and Punishment is a fantastic shoot-'em-up with a unique control scheme, utilizing the analog stick for aiming and the D-pad/C buttons for movement. The game's challenging gameplay is aided by a comprehensive training mode. The review highlights impressive enemies and massive bosses, showcasing the scale of combat. Praised for its blend of classic shoot-'em-up action with strategic elements, the game pushed the N64's 3D capabilities. Despite being an import title released late in the N64's life, its graphics, sound, gameplay, and challenge are top-notch, earning a 95% overall score. The game is considered a late-era masterpiece for the N64, a must-have for fans. This page features a review of Cruisin' Exotica for the N64. It covers the game's arcade-style racing experience, touching on the visuals and gameplay. The review mentions the simple control scheme, primarily involving holding down the A button and using the analog stick for steering. Screenshots show various in-game racing scenes and menu screens, including track selection and transmission options. There's a look at some of the more unusual race locations, like Atlantis, Las Vegas, Amazon, and Mars, described as wacky alternatives to standard tracks. The review highlights the inclusion of a female character who appears to be a trophy awarded for winning races. The page also includes an info box detailing that the game supports up to 4 players, lists Midway and Gratuitous Games as the publisher and developer, and confirms it was an import release available for £39.99. Memory options are mentioned for saving progress. The overall tone, while critical of the game's quality, frames it as another entry in the Cruisin' series on the N64. Cruisin' Exotica is a poorly received N64 racing game. The review slams the game's unrealistic and violent handling, bland tracks with predictable bends, and repetitive car physics. AI opponents are irritating, bumping players around. Unlocking cars is based on mileage, not skill. The game's courses, despite varied landscapes, are basic, lacking shortcuts or power-ups. The audio is awful, with cheap-sounding music and minimal sound effects. Game modes include a challenge mode, a practice area, pre-selected courses, and a 4-player mode. Graphics, audio, gameplay, and challenge all receive low scores, resulting in a dismal 29% overall. A second opinion calls it briefly fun at best, and a soundbite strongly advises against purchasing the game. The review suggests better alternatives were available on the market at the time. This page kicks off the new Total Game Boy section found within the magazine, focusing on Game Boy Color games. It highlights Disney's Winnie the Pooh adventures in the 100-Acre Wood, which was out at the time, featuring Pooh and Tigger, along with some screenshots. The page also explains their review scoring system for the Game Boy Color titles. This page continues the new Total Game Boy section, bringing us a couple of reviews for the Game Boy Color. First up is Obi-Wan's Adventures, based on Star Wars Episode 1. The review highlights it as a surprisingly good Star Wars game for the GBC, focusing on Obi-Wan Kenobi's journey through familiar scenes from the film, including lightsaber combat, dodging droids, and facing off against villains like Darth Maul. It praises the action and puzzle elements, giving it a very impressive score of 91%. The screenshots show isometric gameplay and character confrontations. Alongside that is Dinosaurus, described as a monster combat RPG. It involves fighting dinosaurs and training them, drawing comparisons to Pokémon. While it has some interesting features, the review points out small design flaws and doesn't seem overly impressed, giving it a score of 74%. The screenshots depict various dinosaur encounters and prehistoric environments. Both reviews use the scoring system and review layout introduced on the previous page for the Game Boy Color titles. This page continues the look at Game Boy Color titles, bringing us reviews for Merlin and Xena, Warrior Princess. First up is Merlin, which is described as a platformer where you guide the old wizard through various landscapes to stop evil gnomes who were turned bad by a dragon. The review suggests the core gameplay feels very familiar and, unfortunately, quite dull. It highlights significant issues with the control system, mentioning it's very poor and makes precise jumping difficult. The graphics and audio seem to contribute to a rather unremarkable experience, leading to an overall score of 71%. The soundbite pretty much sums it up, calling it another platformer to consign to the thanks but no thanks bin. Screenshots show Merlin navigating platforming sections and encountering enemies. Next is Xena, Warrior Princess, a title based on the popular TV show. This game is compared to a Zelda-style action RPG, where Xena travels through environments collecting items and battling foes like dragons, ogres, and rabbits. While it features characters from the show, the gameplay is labeled a trudgerama that becomes repetitive. The graphics are called bland, and playability is apparently quite poor. Despite this, it scores slightly better than Merlin at 75%, though the soundbite notes it's a lot like Zelda, only with most of the good bits taken out. Screenshots show Xena in isometric environments, battling enemies, and interacting with the world. Both reviews include standard info panels and a 64,000 questions section highlighting pros and cons. This review covers two Game Boy Color games, Extreme Wheels and Blade. Extreme Wheels, a BMX racing game, is hampered by a frustrating stamina bar and repetitive gameplay, despite decent visuals. It received a 65% and is deemed forgettable. Blade, a side-scrolling beat-em-up based on the film, features colorful graphics and varied levels, but suffers from unresponsive controls, making combat sluggish. The review labels it a disappointing beat-em-up, scoring it 76%. This page features a review of Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. This shoot-em-up game, developed by Traveler's Tales and published by Activision, sees you take control of Buzz across different planets. The review notes that while featuring the popular character, the game suffers from awkward controls making Buzz difficult to maneuver, and mentions the action can become cluttered on screen. Despite these issues, the game is playable but doesn't quite live up to its potential. It scores an overall 55%. This page presents the score zone, showcasing the highest scores achieved by players across a range of N64 titles, like Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, Legend of Zelda, Quake 2, and Donkey Kong 64, encouraging readers to submit their own best times and points. This page continues the score zone feature, packed with top times from players tackling various N64 classics. We've got scoreboards here for Star Wars, Episode 1 Racer, Mario Kart 64, the top-down chows of Micro Machines, the intense corridor shooting of Quake 64, the starfighter combat of Star Wars, Rogue Squadron, the platforming adventures of Banjo-Kazooie, plus score lists for Kena, Warrior Princess and Turok Training, showing off the best runs from dedicated players. There's also a score zone challenge pushing players to hone their skills in GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, and The World Is Not Enough, with the coveted Ultimate Player title awarded monthly, earning the winner a rather nice multi-format steering wheel controller. Finally, there's a mention of the 64 Solutions Cheats Hotline, a phone service offering game tips and cheats for a permanent cost. This page kicks off the massive A to Z of hints, tips and cheats section, providing loads of codes and secrets for plenty of N64 games, including Army Men, Sarge's Heroes, Banjo-Tooie, Body Harvest, and many others like Armorines, Project Swarm and Battle Tanks. You'll find cheats for unlocking characters, weapons, invincibility, and accessing different levels. There's also a big colourful collage of various N64 characters plastered across the page, along with a few small screenshots showing gameplay from games like Armorines, Aero Fighters Assault, and Buck Bumble. This page continues the Cheat Central section, diving into more cracking N64 secrets. You'll find hints and tips for absolute classics, like Diddy Kong Racing, covering how to unlock those tricky bonus tracks and vehicles after beating the time trials. There are also cheats for Destruction Derby 64, Duke Nukem 64, Excitebike 64, the futuristic Racer Extreme Egg, and F1 World Grand Prix for getting pole position. They've even included codes for the brilliant fighting game Fighter's Destiny, including that elusive ninth skill, plus plenty of vital cheats for the legendary GoldenEye 007 covering weapons, invincibility, and level selects. And don't forget 0 Hour, with codes for extra characters and game modes. The page is plastered with a huge collage of recognizable faces from across the N64 library, a real trip down memory lane, alongside a few small action-packed screenshots showing off various games. This page carries on with Cheat Central, bringing you even more cracking cheats for your N64 favorites. There are loads here, including codes for getting the edge in GoldenEye, like gold weapons and invincibility. You'll find plenty for the various Mortal Kombat titles, unlocking characters and modes. Get stuck into cheats for Diddy Kong Racing, Blast Corps, International Superstar Soccer, Mace, The Dark Age, and loads more niche gems. It's all presented with a fantastic collage of classic N64 characters and screenshots, showcasing the action. This page continues the N64 Cheat Central Roundup, packed with tips and tricks to give you the edge in loads of games. The page is plastered with a fantastic collage showing off some classic N64 faces. You've got Donkey Kong and Buzz Lightyear mingling with the South Park lads, plus some proper hard nuts like what looks like Duke Nukem and a monstrous licker from Resident Evil. You'll find codes here for all sorts, like unlocking hidden characters in fighters such as Ready 2 Rumble and Rakuga Kids, getting your hands on that legendary golden gun in Perfect Dark, or opening up tracks and cars in racers like Rush 2 and Revolt. There are also passwords for levels in Quake 2 and Rainbow Six, and plenty more for Robotron 64, Rampage and others, covering everything from invincibility in Resident Evil 2 to just messing about in Off-Road Challenge. It's a proper treasure trove for anyone wanting to break the games wide open. This page carries on with the Cheat Central rundown, giving you even more ways to mess about with your favorite N64 games. The picture spread here is brilliant, slapping together classic faces like Donkey Kong and Buzz Lightyear right alongside the South Park crew, and some serious hard cases from other games, like what looks like Duke Nukem, and a licker from Resident Evil. You've got cheats covering loads of titles, from getting extra options and unlockables in Star Wars Rogue Squadron and Star Wars Racer, to unlocking every character, board, and course in Snowboard Kids. There are also plenty of tricks for South Park and South Park Rally, letting you unlock characters and modes, plus secrets for Space Station Silicon Valley, StarCraft 64, and 1080 snowboarding, covering things like alternate intros, hidden levels, and special borders. It's a proper goldmine for uncovering everything these games have hidden away. The next page carries on the Cheat Central section, packed with more ways to unlock secrets and mess about in various N64 classics. It's quite a visual spread, chucking together icons like Donkey Kong and Buzz Lightyear right next to the South Park lads, and some real tough cookies like Duke Nukem and that licker thing from Resident Evil. You've got helpful tips and codes for loads of games, from getting extra modes and character skins in The World Is Not Enough and Super Smash Bros. To unlocking everything imaginable in games like Top Gear Overdrive, Twisted Edge, and the Turok series. There are also unlocks for Vigilante 8, WWF No Mercy, and vital tips for Zelda, Majora's Mask, ensuring you get the most out of these brilliant titles. The next page is packed with special offers and subscription deals for the magazine. You can grab discounted guides for games like Turok 2, Zelda 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and Lilat Wars, plus snag bundles for the secrets, strategies and solutions books. There are also subscription options, with bonus games like Mario Kart or Perfect Dark, and free strategy books. This page features the magazine's comprehensive Nindex, which is their complete guide to every N64 game they've reviewed over time. It explains that the Nindex is updated every month, allowing you to compare games and see how older titles stack up against new releases. There's a handy key explaining the icons used for things like player count, compatibility with accessories like the controller pack, rumble pack, and expansion pack, whether it was released in the UK, the issue it was reviewed in, the score it received, and a brief comment. There's also a breakdown of game genres, from adventure to strategy/simulation. The bulk of the page is the actual Nindex list itself, covering a huge number of N64 titles with their details and scores. They highlight games scoring 90% and above as 64 Sizzlers, and those scoring 95% and above with a gold medal award, calling them absolute must-haves. Finally, there's the Our Top 10 list, showcasing some of the highest-rated games at the time. It lists Banjo-Tooie, Tom and Jerry, Perfect Dark, StarCraft 64, and GoldenEye. Lower down are Zelda 2, which is Majora's Mask, showing Link on Epona, Twine, Diddy Kong Racing, showing the Kraken's Twine track, Zelda, Ocarina of Time, also showing Link on Epona, Worms, and Mickey's Speedway USA, all with accompanying screenshots. This page continues the Nindex, listing many more N64 games with their scores and comments from the magazine's reviews. It also highlights the top games across several popular genres. You've got the 64 top shoot-'em-ups, featuring a shot of Joanna Dark looking ready for action. Perfect Dark sits right at the top there with a massive 98%, alongside classics like GoldenEye and Vigilante 8 Second Offense. Then there's the 64 top adventure games, showing Link riding Epona, a familiar sight. The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time is number 1 here, scoring 96%, with Majora's Mask and Resident Evil 2 also high up. The 64 top platform games section shows Banjo and Kazooie in a level. Banjo-Tooie leads the pack with 95%, followed by the excellent Rayman 2 and Donkey Kong 64. Even Super Mario 64 and Conker's 12 Tales make the top 5. Finally, the 64 top 4-player games list, showing a top-down view of multiplayer chows, includes many of the same top-rated games like Perfect Dark and GoldenEye, showing their strength in multiplayer, plus solid sports titles like ISS 98 and WWF No Mercy proving popular for local battles. This page from the Nindex details top-rated Nintendo 64 games across multiple genres. It showcases the 64 top racing games, featuring titles like F1 World Grand Prix and Ridge Racer 64. The 64 top sports games highlights IS-98 and Tony Hawk Skateboarding. 64 top party/puzzle features Buster Move 2. 64 top strategy/simulation lists StarCraft 64 and Command & Conquer. Also included are 64 top Game Boy Color titles, with a look at Daikatana and Tomb Raider. Finally, a section on the 64 top bad games names titles like Carmageddon and Superman, known for their poor reception. This page marks the magazine's significant 50th issue, looking back at the absolute best games, the worst ones, and even those you just couldn't help but have a soft spot for despite their flaws. There's also a big advert showing off a load of N64 games available for purchase from MX2, featuring everything from essential titles like Zelda, Perfect Dark, and Super Smash Bros., to sports games, racers, and even infamous ones like Carmageddon 64.